Hi everyone and welcome along to today's admin training. So today's training is going to be specifically for SuiteFiles admin users, and we'll be going through the main admin features and what SuiteFiles admins will need to do in order to manage their SuiteFiles site and subscriptions. First of all, we'll just discuss the requirements and what's actually supported for using SuiteFiles. Now we do have this information on our Help Centre, which is help.suitefiles.com. So I'll just jump into the Help Centre there. Now, if you haven't already, I recommend that you read up on the Welcome to SuiteFiles article. And that will take you through things like setting up your computer, how to log into SuiteFiles, installing those SuiteFiles apps, and then also we've got a quick start guide for yourselves. So first of all, we're just going to talk about the system requirements. So in terms of a Windows computer, Windows 8 and 10 is what we support and recommend. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have any issues on Windows 7, but for anyone that's still on it, just note that it is getting a little bit older now, so we can't guarantee that everything will run on it as effectively as if you're on Windows 8 or 10. Now the browser that we recommend for everyone is Chrome. So we specifically build our web app for Chrome, as well as we have our Chrome extension. So that allows you to take advantage of a lot of extra functionality, particularly with the Zero Practice Manager or Workflow Max integrations. That's a really handy thing to have. And then in terms of the versions of Office, we recommend that you have Office 2016 or Office 365. Now our add-ins have been built for Windows computers. So we've got an Outlook add-in which sits out to the right of your installed or desktop version of Outlook. And for those of you on Windows, it's likely what you've seen around as you've been demoing and looking at SuiteFiles. That main app is for the desktop version for Windows users. Now, if you are using a Mac or if you are using the web version of Outlook, then we do also have a different add-in available, but that one you'll need to contact us to get that enabled. Now, given the current climate, I don't even know what to call it right now, but in terms of everyone shifting to a remote working environment, if your team can't get the desktop version of Outlook installed on the computer that they're working at from home, then the web app version is probably the next best thing. So it doesn't work exactly the same. There are some key differences, but it's better than nothing. So definitely recommend, if you can't get Outlook native or the desktop version installed for everyone in your team, then do as a backup get us to install the web app version. To do that, just contact our support team, which is support@suitefiles.com, and just ask for the web version of Outlook. Or if you have any team members that are using a Mac computer while they're working remotely, we do also need to enable that manually. So whichever your situation, if you're wanting to use the browser-based or the web-based version of Outlook, or if you're wanting to use the version of Outlook for Macs, contact us and we'll get that all deployed at our end and send you the instructions on how to get that all set up. So that's a very important note, especially given a lot of people are moving to a work from home environment right now. Okay, so that's in terms of Outlook, and then we've also got our SuiteFiles Drive app. Now that's only available to those of you on a Windows computer, so we don't have a Mac equivalent to that one. The other thing to note is that the SuiteFiles Drive, it doesn't work on terminal and on a terminal server environment. So unfortunately, we can't give you a hand with that. But for everyone else, you should be able to install the Drive app. If you do need any support with logging in or any of the advanced settings or anything like that, then do check out our Help Centre articles on the under SuiteFiles drive there. There's a lot of information that should hopefully point you in the right direction. If not, contact us at support@suitefiles.com. Okay, so there's another thing to be aware of, and that is covered in our Help Center article. I'm just going to do a search for that. So there's some restricted characters in Office 365, and because SuiteFiles is built on top of Office 365, it's really important that you're aware of these and that your team's also aware of these. So these characters cannot be used, are used in folder and file names. So they're listed here in this article. If you were to use them, or if you were to say rename a file and pop one of these characters in there, then you'll find that you can't rename the file or folder. So it's important to be aware of them. There are some characters such as the ampersand or a plus symbol, underscores, commas, and brackets. They can be used, so you'll see that they're not on this list. So the list can change from time to time, so we have included a link out to Microsoft's list of restricted characters just so you've got the latest and greatest information, but please do just pass that on, make mention of this article to your team members so that they don't get tripped up by adding, say, an asterisk to a folder name and wondering why it won't work. Okay, so a quick note on adding users to SuiteFiles. So when you first get started, just note that adding users to SuiteFiles isn't actually done through the SuiteFiles interface. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to set up a person that you want to have access to SuiteFiles needs to have a access to your Office 365 account. So you need to give them an Office 365 login, so have an active, have an Office 365 license in your Office 365 account. And then what that user needs to do is they need to go to your SuiteFiles URL, so you'll need to provide them with that, and then they'll log in with their new Office credentials that you've just provided them. And when they log into SuiteFiles for the very first time, our app will recognize them as a new active user, and they'll be added to your monthly subscription. So this is how it works by default, but if you have a number of people in your Office 365 account who don't need access to your SuiteFiles site, or you don't want them to have access to your Office 365 account, you can change that default behavior. It is something that you'll need to let our support team know about, and they can arrange for that to be changed for you, and they can also show you the process for doing that going forward, so you can manage that yourself as users come and go. Speaking of users going, so whenever you have a person leave your team and therefore they need to be removed from your SuiteFiles subscription, it's really hard for us to judge if somebody has left. So like most apps, you'll need to manually remove them from your subscription. So to do this, you'll need to go into our management portal, and the best way to access this is from the web app, going to your username in the top right corner, and then selecting Manage Subscription. So this will automatically log you in to the management portal, and the way to remove a user is to go to your Manage Users list, hover over that user name, and then you'll see that it turns red. Just click that little minus button and then follow the prompts to delete that user. You can also do some other things in the management portal, which is to change your subscription types. If you want to switch up your license, you can do so here. And at the end or at the beginning of each new month, we'll charge you for your usage for the previous month. And an invoice will be issued, and that can be found in the View Invoices tab. So just click on the link here to the invoice number. That will provide you with that link. You can print that or save that to SuiteFiles from there. And you can also view the activity as well of your users. Just note that if you do need to change your credit card, that will be done in a different spot. So if you go into your username, click Account, Billing Details, click Update Credit Card, and that will take you through the process of updating that for you. Okay, so now we'll take a look at user permissions, folder permissions, and setting up what we call security groups. So in the More tab in SuiteFiles, you've got this Manage Users and Groups. So click on that, and then under the Manage Users and Groups, it's going to list all of the security groups in SuiteFiles, and it's also going to list any users that have logged into SuiteFiles and allow us to set permissions for individual people. So if we start at the top here, we've got these special groups. These are default groups. So we've got the site admins. So these admins can manage users, templates, they can delete and override all folder permissions that you set. So the best way to manage your site admins is to actually scroll down to the all users list and say if we say, look at user Roche, you can see that they're not an administrator. If you were to toggle that to yes, that would make them an administrator, and then they'd be added to the site admins group. All contributors just means everyone who has access to your SuiteFiles site. Now this member here, we can ignore that. It is a default group in Office 365. It literally represents everyone in your Office 365 account that has permissions. So some people will have individual users listed, and then everyone else will be part of this. It's like a SharePoint online group. So you don't necessarily need to touch this. In fact, I'd recommend that you don't, just because if you were to delete this, it might cause access issues for your team. So what we do recommend that you do is just leave that be, so don't delete anything. And if you do need help with managing access, as I mentioned before, there is a little bit of setup that's involved. If you're wanting to, say, restrict access to certain people, you have to make some changes here, which I won't go through in detail. I leave that to our tech support team to help you out with. So yeah, if you do want to make that change, then please do contact us at support@suitefiles.com, and we will be sure to help you out there. Now, under this all groups section, so this is going to show you all of the security groups that you have in your site. Now, there are also some default groups here. These are members, owners, and visitors. So these are not set up by you. These are just ones that have been set up by through SuiteFiles automatically, and it's linked to your Office 365 account. So again, the members, owners, and visitors doesn't need to be deleted or changed, but the rest of them, these ones represent security groups that we have set up. Security group is just a way that we manage access to folders. So you can see here we have an accounting group. It contains 3 users. So when we apply permissions, we actually apply the accounting group to the folder, which would then give access to Callum, Jack, and Jamie, rather than going through each individual folder and assigning Callum, Jack, and Jamie to the ones that we want them to have access to. So I'll take you through that process very, very soon. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch on this all users list. So the all users will represent everyone that that has ever accessed your SharePoint site. So you might have people in this list who no longer are there, and so you'll see, for example, the last login was earlier this month. So they're no longer a SuiteFiles user perhaps, and so you would have gone into the management portal and removed them. Don't forget to change their Office 365 password when they leave, so that they, for starters, can't actually access their Office 365 account or get back into SuiteFiles. It's a one thing that you can do to prevent them from accessing it. But in terms of their name, they'll always be shown in this list, just because we need to be able to show you in the in SuiteFiles as you're navigating through your folders and files who last modified a file. So that's why their name will always be there. But in terms of actual permissions, you can go through and you can set different permissions for different people. So this here that we see on my screen now, that's my permissions. So I'm an admin for this particular site. So you can see here that user is administrator, that's set to yes. And it's really important to note that admins can see absolutely everything in SuiteFiles. So it overrides, so making somebody an admin will override any other folder permissions that have been set up. So it's a really critical point to make here. Even if you apply folder permissions and that person is not part of that group, because they're an admin, they'll be able to see that folder anyway. So keep that in mind as you're making people admins in your site. It's for this reason that we have the ability to sort of toggle certain permissions on and off per user. So as an admin, I can do all of these things. As a different user, so as a standard user, I'm not an administrator. So you can either be a standard user or an administrator. So right now I'm not an admin, but my admin has allowed me to manage templates and delete folders and files. So those options are switched to yes for this user Rosh, but they're not allowed to download folders and they're not allowed to manage my custom brand settings for document signing. So custom branding just applies to document signing right now. It's not to say that we won't introduce that for other options such as Connect in the future, but right now this just relates to doc signing, and this user Rosh can't access either of those things. If we take a look at the security groups next, so let's just take a look at creating a new security group. So if we take a look, who we're going to create? I think we've got every type of group under the sun here. So I'm just going to create just a basic another group. So we'll create that group. So typically they'll relate to, say, a department. I'm not feeling particularly inventive or creative right now, so apologies, but you set up the group, you give that group a name, and then the next step is to add users to that group. So you just start typing in those names. So I'm just going to add myself, and I'm going to add Molly, and I'm going to add Jamie, or Jack, and then Jamie. Okay, so those 4 people are now part of my new group, and it means that when I add another group as a folder permission, then all those 4 people will now gain access to it. So to apply that folder permission, I'm just going to jump into my files and SuiteFiles, and you can see here that I have a super secret folder with a lot of important information. And in order to apply folder permissions, I can click on the 3 dots here. The other way to do that is to right click a folder and from the left hand side and select manage permissions. That's another way of doing it. So manage permissions, and first step is to switch that customized folder permissions onto yes. And then we need to add the group or groups who we want to be able to edit the files in this folder. So I'll just add that another group, and let's say we want the HR group and the admin team to be able to have access to that folder. So this will give them full edit access. If we now close that window, and that saves the changes that I've just made, I'm also logged in as a different user. So as user Rosh, I'm logged in here as her. And if you can see, I can see the secret folder, but if I refresh now, after my admin's actually made that change, if I just refresh my SuiteFiles, you can see that since that change has taken effect, I can no longer see that folder even exists. So that shows the impact of applying folder permissions and what the user at the other end who isn't part of that group, that's what they'll see. So they won't even see that the folder exists in the first place. Back in folder permissions, if we jump back into manage the permissions, you'll note that we have an advanced option as well. So this gives you another middle ground where you can enable certain groups to have read-only access. So you can see all of your security groups that you have set up for your site will be listed here. And for example, if I wanted to say, let the another group have read-only access rather than full editing access, I can make that change. So with edit access, the users within that group will have full access. They can modify and upload content and rename files. But if you're in that read-only group, they won't be able to create or modify content or upload anything to that folder, but just note that they will be able to save a copy of a file. So if there's a Word document in there, they'll be able to open that up and then do a file save as and make a copy of that. If they have read-only permissions, so that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then finally, if they have no permissions at all, then as you saw in the other users login, they won't even be able to see that folder exists. So on folder permissions, they do apply to everything under that folder. So now that I've applied a permission to only those people for the secret folder, then that also means that only they can access this secret 1 and secret 2 subfolder as well. So that's it for folder permissions, and it does bring us to the end of the entire admin training session. So a nice quick one for you today. If you do have any questions at all about anything that I've covered here today, then please do add those questions to the Q&A section, and I will do my very best to answer them. Otherwise, hopefully you'll be able to find what it is that you're looking for on our Help Center. The search is probably the best way to get any answers that you have. And if you can't find what you're looking for, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with our support team. Email us at support@suitefiles.com, and we'll be more than happy to help point you in the right direction. Thanks so much everyone for attending, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.